Yesterday, we talked about the 3 rules of drawing and the 5 elements of drawing. Remember, the 5 elements are kind of like the alphabet we use to make a drawing, and the 3 rules of drawing are rules that I've come up with over time. Now, I was sitting down last night and thinking, these are my 3 main rules. But as I go along, there's other things that I'm going to talk about that could be, you could kind of consider them rules. Like to make a circle, you start at the top and come down. That's a good rule. So there's kind of like rules and then there's like minor rules. So I may make more rules. Who knows? It's Mrs. Donahue. I never do anything that people expect, right? So yesterday we learned about the elements. So the first one, line, that's a straight line. Curve is a curve that bends one way. So if you want to make an S, that's actually 2 curves. An angle, it bends one way also, but it bends very sharply. So a Z is 2 angles. We have a circle. Even though that's flat, it's part of the circle family. A circle is anytime a curve starts and stops in the same place. And then we have dots. So any circle that's colored in is a dot. But for the most part, artists use dots to identify places where things are going to happen in their picture. And we usually end up connecting them with lines. Not always, but most of the time. And then our 3 rules of drawing are that you should draw light until it's right. Now I'm going to use a pen. You can kind of draw light with a pen. But with a pencil, if you draw light, you can erase all of your lines out, which is kind of nice. The second one, draw what you see, not what you know. This is one of the hardest drawing rules of all because what's happening, most of your classes at school are asking you to be logical and to solve problems like math problems. The part of your brain that does that is called your left hemisphere. So it's really good at figuring out what A, B, M, L, Q, what those letters mean, what sounds they make. It's also really good at recognizing things very quickly. So your left side of your brain will see this and say, oh, that's a cloud. But the right side of your brain is much better at really looking at the world. And this is what your right side of your brain might see as a cloud. So it's really hard to get those symbols out of your brain. So when you're drawing, make sure you're drawing exactly what you see, because no flower really looks like this. You want to draw only from your eyes, and we'll talk some more about that later. And then the next one is that you should draw the things that are close to you first. And I showed this little picture of a person in front of a tree. If you draw the tree first, then there's like a branch going straight through. So you would draw the person first and then the tree afterward. And we're going to have to do a little bit of that today. Then we drew a fish. Well, first we drew an insect. Then we drew a fish. And here's a big picture of the fish. And then we drew an owl. And here's a picture of the owl. I started to do some extra work on it. And what we were supposed to do was after you finished your fish and your owl, you were supposed to go back in and add color or texture. And I showed them this. This is a different fish, but this is an example. I just used my pen for this. Now, remember how I was saying your brain is so used to looking for patterns that it's really good at ignoring some things. If you notice, if I get really close, you'll see how scribbly my lines really are in this picture. Pretty scribbly. But as you zoom back out, the scribbles don't matter as much and it all starts to make sense. So this is my steampunk fish that I made. So now what we're going to do, we're going to start a new drawing. We're going to like move away from the cartoony pictures and start moving into something more realistic. Now, when I was a kid, one of the very first things I learned how to draw was a bird. Birds are actually a pretty simple thing to draw. So this morning for my Block 4 class, I drew this bird. And we're going to walk through together and we're going to draw the bird. And then if you have time, you can color it like I did. Everyone needs a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen. I like to use a pen, but you can use a pencil. For right now, we're just going to draw kind of a robin or a Tweety bird, something that you would see out in your backyard, or maybe like a parakeet you might keep in a cage. So when artists start, now we drew some cartoony pictures yesterday, and we didn't really have to worry too much about making them the right proportions or making them look very realistic. But if you want to be good at drawing, you have to get good at making things that are realistic. Even if in your final artwork that you make, it isn't very realistic, you still need those skills. So I'm going to draw my bird right in the middle. So before you start anything, you kind of imagine where it's going to be. It's going to have a tail that sticks down. And then I'm going to make very lightly a circle for my bird's head. Now remember, draw light until it's right. And it looks like I'm making 100 million little lines, and that's okay. That's how you get something that really looks like a circle. Don't worry if the first lines aren't right. Your brain is going to find the right line as you go. So draw a very light circle. That's going to be the bird's head. Okay, next thing we're going to do is an oval for the body. So I'm going to make it much bigger, and it's kind of down into the edge. And it's just another oval, and again, it's very light because I don't want to have it be part of my final project. You see, it's kind of like a Venn diagram. They're overlapping a little where the neck is. And then the next thing I'm going to do is make a long tail, and it's really like an angle sticking off the end. You want to make the tail longer than you think it should be because birds have heavy beaks, and if they didn't have long tails, they would fly straight down. They wouldn't be able to fly level. So their tail is like their counterbalance. Now I'm going to imagine the center of my oval, and right below the center, I'm going to put a circle. Very light, small circle, smaller than the head. That's going to be where my leg is attaching. And then my other leg is going to be next to it. It's going to be a little higher up. And I can only see part of it. So I'm just going to do like a little curve like that. All right. Here's his head. Here's his tail. So I'm going to go around that and I'm going to connect this just like this. And sometimes it's a good idea to make the back a little straighter than the edge of a circle might be. Now that's my basic shape of my bird, but I need his legs. Now, the hard part about birds is making them look like they balance. So you don't want this one here looks like he's going to fall backward. I'm not really pleased with that. So I'm going to try harder on this one. Now, birds' legs bend like people's arms, not like people's legs. So they're going to bend backward like an elbow here. So I'm going to make a line that's coming back and then a line that's coming forward that's longer. And at the end of that line, I'm going to put a little hook, just like that. And this other leg, I won't be able to see this part if I want it to look like it's standing right. So I'm going to imagine that part back there, but what I'm really going to do is take that piece and just put the curve part. So the rest of the leg is back behind the bird. I can't see it, so I don't have to draw it. Okay, the next thing I'm going to need is his wing. So right where these two, where the head and the body cross, that little, I don't know, eye-shaped thing, I'm going to go below that to do his wing. But I'm not going to start here. Even though like his wing muscles probably start here, we wouldn't see the wing until out a little ways like this. And you're going to just make like you're making a lowercase letter F and make it come down toward the bottom, kind of stop somewhere in the middle of the tail. And now birds have feathers, right? We're just going to use the lowercase letter U, right? Little U's in here. And I'm making it go up at an angle a little bit here. Just blending it into the side of the body. That's going to be the end of his wing. If you make yours too short, mine's a little short, you can just add more to it. The next thing we're going to do is the eye. The eye is not quite the exact center of the head. You're going to move it up just a little bit to the corner here. And if you do this right, when you're coloring it in, you can leave a little black spot. That always looks nice. Not required, but it looks good. The next shape we're going to make is a teardrop. But I'm going to turn my bird sideways so you can see that it's a teardrop. You don't have to turn your bird, but It does help if you see it sideways to know it's a teardrop. There's so many different kinds of birds. Your beak does not have to be any particular type of beak for it to still look like a bird. And then right down the center of that, I'm going to draw a line. It's not quite the center, it's a little below the center, but that's the bottom of his beak. Now, I don't know if you can see. I've got part of his wing that we can't see is showing right here. I think I should have made it longer, but whatever, it's there. So you're going to just make that like backward J here. Comes down. You don't want it to go down quite as far as that one. So I should have made it right here, but it's okay. You could put a couple of feathers on it or whatever you want to do. Now we just need to make his feet look right. So I'm going to stop there for a second, let everybody get caught up. All right. The next step, we're going to turn his legs, like right now they're just toothpick legs. They're not going to hold him up. We're going to turn him into the right type of leg. And I kind of messed up here. I think that should have been going down this way a little bit, but that's okay. So I'm going to make it wider by adding an extra line. And then I'm going to add that line all the way down to the end. So it's a very sad bird with only one finger. So go ahead and do that with the other one. Now, birds have 3 talons in the front and 1 in the back. So I'm going to add some more here. So just starting a little ways back on your line, you're going to make a curved line and then curve back. I'll do it on this one too. So you just go a little ways back and make a curved line and then follow it back. Then I'm going to add one over here too. Just a curved line. This one's more like a C because of the way it is. And then back. This one's just barely going to fit in here. It's kind of standing strange, but that's okay. And then they have 3 front talons and they have a back one, but we won't be able to see it because we're going to have a branch. So I'm just going to kind of extend a little line down there that will look like it when we get the branch in place. I probably should do the branch first because one of our rules is draw the thing close to you first. That's why I drew the feet before I drew the branch, but that's why I should have drawn those back ones after the branch because it's in front of them. So now drawing a branch can be very frustrating. It's hard not to make it look like to turn off the left side of your brain. This is one of the things you see from people who are left brain drawers. These are trees in the left brain world. In my world, that's called a lollipop tree. Please don't do that. You can move it a little bit away by adding some V's in here. That just makes it a little more interesting. But we're going to draw a really nice branch that looks like a branch. And part of the trick to this with branches is making some squiggly lines. Your brain wants to make branches straight, but really branches grow in all kinds of different weird directions. So to do this, I'm going to start way up here and I'm going to make a line that is kind of crazy and it's going to come down. It's going to get straight toward the end and it's going to stop when it gets to his foot. Then I'm going to go on the other side of his foot and attach to the next foot. And then I'm going to go on this side of the foot and I'm going to go down a ways and stop. Now, when we do the next part, we are going to come down and we're going to leave some openings along the way. So I'm going to start at the tip. I'm going to come down a little ways. When you see a bend, that's a really good place to leave an opening, but you can leave them anywhere really. But so I'm kind of going skinny at the top, and as I go down, I'm going to get wider. So I'm going to start skinny, leave a gap, a little bit more, leave a gap, a little bit more. And notice how it's getting thicker. The branch is getting thicker as I go. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to leave a big gap because the branch is getting bigger. Look at this big lump. I love how that is. It's going to look like it grew right out of that lump. Then I'm going to come down here. When you get to the bird's foot, you lift up so you can go behind those toes. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom. And this time I'm going to go actually down quite a ways. So now it's kind of a sad branch, just like one part of a branch. But each one of these openings can now make a new branch out of them. So I can start up here with another line and squiggle its way down. And then I just can turn that into a branch by following my same method. As I get lower down, the branch has to get thicker. Don't make them too straight, it won't look real. You can do the same thing, just leave some gaps along the way and then fill them in with other branches. And the cool thing about trees is there's so many different kinds of trees and every tree grows its own way. So it's going to look real as long as it's not perfectly straight. So now I left this opening here. I'm going to make another branch that goes back here, but it's not going to be nearly as big. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? It's just a bird and a branch. Now you could do all kinds of stuff in here, like add colors to it, add stripes on it. When you want to add a different layer of color, you want to have the edge of it look like they're feathers. So it's sometimes good to have, like if I wanted to have a white stripe on here, I would make some feathers for the edges of the stripe. It's still a little cartoony, but it's getting a little bit more realistic looking. I don't like, he still looks like he's fallen off the branch. Maybe I should put a little branch that he's holding in his mouth, and that's heavy, and that's why it's, I don't know. I'm inventing stuff now, so it may not be good. He could be carrying a branch for his nest. Maybe he is falling. I don't know. So this is how we take that cartoony look and we kind of try and bring it into more realistic looking. I started with those really light lines for the main pieces of the body. I started with simple lines for his legs and then added another line to make it wider. Let me show you some pictures in this little book that are very similar. So here's somebody who's drawing a cat. See how they start with a circle here and a circle here? And they've got little circles for their feet and everything. And slowly they just take the circles and add them together and erase out. You can kind of still see them down here, but they erase them out by the time you get here. If you're using a pencil, that's fine, you know, you can erase it. But when you're using pen, it's okay to just leave it there. People's brains will make do. They will make it make sense. Now, you see these things? If you look on the internet, you will find basically anything you want to draw broken down into these pieces similar to this because this is the way people do it. So you are welcome to go and look out on the internet when you want to find something like that. So now we've got our bird, right? We've got our owl, we've got our fish. So that gives you 3 drawings to finish. Tomorrow we're going to start on the real thing. We're going to start our tropical fish.